Welcome to Comics Are Awesome, brought to you by Alter Ego Comics. My name is Mark. I am a longtime comic book reader and 16-year comic book retailer. And every Tuesday night, I read a big old stack of new releases and then come back and report on the ones that I like the most. So there was a lot to love this week. Let's get right to it. This is in no particular order. First up is Amazing Spider-Man number 15, written by Nick Spencer, artwork by Chris Bachalo. This continues the storyline that started last issue, where it's a lot of personal stuff for Pete and Spidey involving Aunt May and the fact that she's kind of sort of broke now. And we know that Kraven the Hunter is planning something big and bad and horrible for the web slinger, and he's been putting the pieces in place for the last several issues. And we get to see a little bit more of that here, and I believe issue 16, which is the next issue, kicks off the Hunted storyline, which is a callback to Kraven's Last Hunt, which was published in the mid to late 1980s and is a fantastic Spider-Man story. If you have not read Kraven's Last Hunt, I highly recommend it. I would consider it one of the essential reads if you're a Spider-Man fan or if you want to get into Spider-Man. It's very dark though, so fair warning. Not as many quips as you come to expect from a Spider-Man story. So Taskmaster and Black Ant have captured the Rhino in this issue, and the Rhino is being taken to Arcade's mad world of Kraven fun. So Kraven has hired frequent X-Men villain Arcade to build some sort of crazy gauntlet for presumably Spider-Man to run through. And this continues to set the stage for that happening. I've enjoyed every issue of Nick Spencer's Spider-Man run. Filling the shoes of Dan Slott is no easy feat, but I think Nick Spencer is doing a great job. And they've had kind of a little bit of a rotating art team on here. Ryan Ottley is probably the mainstay here, formerly of Invincible, and I think Ottley does a great job. But Chris Bachalo's gotten to do a couple of issues here. So if you're a Spider-Man fan, do not skip on Amazing Spider-Man number 15. It continues to be great. Next up is Avengers No Road Home number 1, which is my pick of the week. This is a 10-issue miniseries by the creators behind Avengers No Surrender. That includes writers Al Ewing, Jim Zub, and Mark Waid, pencils by Paco Medina, and Paco Medina's pencils are outstanding. Let me just get that out of the way here. The book looks fantastic. So it features Voyager, who was the central character in No Surrender, and there is another huge threat that is facing the Avengers. This time, it may involve Hercules and his lineage. So I've always liked the character of Hercules. Sometimes he's used for comic relief. Sometimes he's really a badass. And I think when you find that happy medium, it works best. And that's what we see in Avengers No Road Home. So we have kind of this motley crew of Avengers that gets put together, including, as I said, Hercules. But then we've got, get ready for it, Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, the Immortal Hulk, Rocket Raccoon, Vision, and Photon, I believe. I think that's what Monica Rambeau is going by now. But those are your core characters that are set up in this. You also get some inside looks at some of the other Avengers, and frankly, I couldn't even pick these people out of a lineup. I understand that some people may feel an attachment to them, but I can't even name them. So don't worry about the side characters if you're not interested. If you are interested in those side characters, then great, they're there too. But the core is the group that I just mentioned. And it's really great to see Rocket and Immortal Hulk interact, because Rocket Raccoon's first appearance was in an issue of The Incredible Hulk, and to see the Immortal Hulk interact with Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, who put a gamma arrow into his head back in, was it Civil War II? I don't even remember. Might have been the series before that. But this is great. It's fun yet serious. Great interaction between all of these Avengers that are not used to hanging out together, and an epic threat that 5 or 6 issues in is going to bring Conan the Barbarian into the mainstream Marvel universe, or get the Marvel characters into his universe. Remains to be seen. So highly recommend picking up Avengers No Road Home, especially if you're an Avengers fan. It is a can't miss issue. Let's see what else we've got here. Captain Marvel number 2 is new this week. Written by Kelly Thompson, artwork by Carmen Carnero. I really enjoyed issue number 1. In fact, I think I may have mentioned that I've never been a big fan of Captain Marvel's solo books. they just didn't click with me, but this one does, and I have to attribute that to primarily Kelly Thompson. I like everything she writes, including West Coast Avengers and Nancy Drew over at Dynamite and Mr. and Mrs. X over at Marvel. So Captain Marvel is great as far as character development, as far as dialogue, and I don't want to give too much away, but something has pulled many of the female heroes in the Marvel Universe into a different dimension, realm, something like that. And you're seeing interactivity, is that a word, between characters like Echo and Captain Marvel that you normally don't see. You've got Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew in there. Hazmat from issue number 1 is in there as well. And it's just really, really solid, folks. I think if you've been trying to decide if you want to get into a Captain Marvel series ahead of the movie, I would highly recommend this one. Actually, I'd suggest you go back and read the life of Captain Marvel and then get into this series. Or if you're familiar with Captain Marvel because of other Marvel comics, Captain Marvel, the current series, is top-notch. Top-notch. Check it out. All right, let's see where we go next here. Criminal, number 2. Almost my pick of the week. For those of you that are familiar with our local shop here, Alex picked Criminal as his pick of the week. This is issue number 2, as I said, written by Ed Brubaker, artwork by Sean Phillips. So the Criminal universe has been around for a while, 15 years, give or take. And the nice thing about this series is it gives Brubaker and Phillips a chance to play with characters that appeared in previous volumes of Criminal, but you don't have to know anything about them to pick it up and enjoy it. Criminal number 1 was a standalone story. Criminal number 2 is part 1 of a 2-part story that focuses on I guess a washed up or disgraced comic book artist who's probably in his 70s, and he's being given a Lifetime Achievement Award at a big Comic-Con, and he asks one of his old assistants, who really doesn't like the guy, to be his chauffeur to cart him around from place to place, and we're off to the races. Nobody writes dialogue like Ed Brubaker, and that's a compliment. If you enjoy crime comics, you're going to enjoy the heck out of Criminal, and it will make you want to go back and find the previous volumes of it. The nice thing about this one is if you are familiar with the comic book industry at all, it's extra special. You don't have to be able to enjoy Criminal number 2, but if you are, it's like, I don't know, finding Easter eggs in a DVD in a Marvel movie. Criminal number 2 is top-notch stuff. As I said, contender for my pick of the week, and it was picked by Alex here at Alter Ego Comics, so definitely check it out. If you missed number 1, you can probably still find it. If you can't find it, as I said, you don't have to have read number 1 to pick up number 2, because issue 2 and 3 will have nothing to do with issue number 1, and that's kind of cool that we've got stories being told in 1 issue or 2 issues where you're not being led from issue to issue to issue for, you know, ever and ever. Some people like that. I do like that, but some people want done-in-one stories, and Criminal is going to give you an opportunity for that. They're just going to be very dark and crime-related. Where do we go next? Flash number 64. This is part 2 of The Price. It's written by Joshua Williamson, artwork by Rafael Sandoval, and man, was this good. Again, a shout-out to Sandoval with his art here. It is phenomenal. Williamson's been writing The Flash from the very first issue, so 64 issues of writing The Flash, and continues to do a stellar job. If you haven't picked up number 1 yet, I highly recommend, or part 1, which was in Batman number 64. I'm going to spoil a little bit of it, but it's been a week. I think spoiler bets are off. The people behind the mystery that The Flash and Batman are investigating, I'll mention one person, I'll leave the other one a mystery, but Gotham Girl, who appeared in Tom King's first volume of Batman. And it's heartbreaking, it's action-packed, it's old and new mixed together. It's everything that's great about comics. It's a story told on a massive scale, which you will never see on the big screen, which you will only get in comics, and highly recommend it. It's a 4-part series. This is part 2, and I believe it's weekly, so we get Batman alternating with issues of The Flash, and the price is definitely worth the price that you'll pay to bring it home. Did that sound cheesy? I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Moving right along. Let's move to the next issue to talk about, which is Ironheart. Ironheart number 3, out this week. Same creative team, Eve Ewing and Luciano Vecchio. This book is just so good. It's got so much heart, just like Ironheart herself, just like Riri Williams. I've been a big fan of these young new Marvel characters, whether it's Sam Alexander as Nova or Miles Morales as Spider-Man. And now we have Riri Williams as Ironheart, Kate Bishop as Hawkeye. These are great characters that stand on their own. They're not just copies of their namesakes, and they've got interesting stories. These creators are telling interesting stories about them. And Ironheart is really clicking with me. It's clicking with a lot of people. So I won't say too much about that other than we're 3 issues in. I've enjoyed every issue, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for something new within the Marvel Universe. So far, we haven't had any interaction, I think, in 3 issues with other Marvel characters. So this really is Riri Williams' story. She's not dependent on other Marvel mainstays to tell that story. So I'm digging it. What is next? A couple of books I haven't read yet, but I'm going to get to. Lollipop Kids is one of those books that I have on my pull list, and I read it when I usually wait until I get a story arc and then I read them all at once. But issue 1 impressed me enough, and Adam Glass, who is the writer, has wowed me with his work on Rough Riders and the Normals. So I haven't read the new issue of Lollipop Kids, but I highly recommend it. Mr. Miracle is out in trade this week. I bailed on the series at one point. It was a 12-issue series, and honestly, I read so many comics every week that they build up, and my memory is not what it used to be. Having to remember, I'm not that old, but having to remember all kinds of stuff, I don't always remember what happened in the previous issue, especially in miniseries. So a lot of times, if I like it, I'll just wait and I'll pick up the trade. So I have my copy of Mr. Miracle waiting for me, and I'm looking forward to checking it out. There were some other single issues that I read last night. Let's go with, this is more of a public service announcement. Savage Sword of Conan #1 is out this week by Jerry Duggan and Ron Garney. I did not read it. I am not a huge fan of Conan the Barbarian. No hate mail, please. But I am a huge fan of Ron Garney's artwork. Most recently, he worked with Charles Soule on Daredevil. So if you are a Conan fan, Savage Sword of Conan is available, and we had a great comment on our Instagram unfortunately, I don't have the user's handle handy, but if you look at the cover, Savage Sword of Conan #1 features Conan wielding not a savage sword, but an axe. You had one job: put a sword in Conan's hand. Okay, Superman #8. Man, I love what's going on in Superman. Brian Michael Bendis, artwork by Brandon Peterson and Ivan Reis. This continues the story of where John Kent has been traveling in space with his grandfather, who we thought was dead for many, many, many years. Jor-El is actually still around, if it is in fact Jor-El. I think that remains to be seen. And so we get to find out what John has been doing. He's been gone for like a year, but actually, it wasn't even a year. It was like a summer vacation, so it was several months Earth time, but 6 years have gone by for John. He's now 17 instead of 11, and part of this is Clark and Lois taking John to the Fortress of Solitude and running diagnostics on him and such to make sure he is who he says he is. And there's some great dialogue in here with Superman that as a father, I can totally relate to. I mean, he's lost 6 years of his son's life, important years, adolescent years, where Clark was probably planning on kind of being John's guide through those really tough years, those teenage years, and they're gone, and he's not getting them back. And Superman's pissed, rightfully so. I would be pissed too, and you can tell Bendis as a father when he's writing this really hit me. So I've liked this from issue 1. I've mentioned before that both Superman and Action are very strong titles, but they are slow moving. And that's okay, because Bendis is one of the best writers out there, and it just gives us more dialogue to read. The artwork is top-notch as well, so pick it up. If you haven't picked it up, I recommend it. Superman is awesome. All right, I think we're in the home stretch here. We have one more book to talk about, And this was also a contender for Pick of the Week, Wonder Twins #1. This is a 6-issue miniseries written by Marc Russell, who is writing Red Sonja. I talked about that last week. He has also written Snagglepuss and some other stuff. I didn't realize that he was the guy that wrote God is Disappointed in You, which is a book that we sell regularly here in the shop, kind of a satirical look at the Old Testament. But all that aside, artwork here is by Stephen Byrne, and man, his stuff is awesome. He did the Justice League Power Rangers miniseries, but it's totally fitting for this book, and it's great to look at. So Zan and Jaina have been exiled from their homeworld, and Superman has kind of helped them adjust to life on Earth. They're enrolled in high school. They're kind of being brought into the Justice League to be on monitor duty, and this is a very humor-filled look at the Justice League and at life as Zan and Jaina. So it's, how can I say this? It's funny, but it's also grounded in reality to some degree. You see, Zan talking about himself in the third person and how he's going to, hit it off with the ladies and how he needs to come up with a catchphrase and things like that. Whereas Zana, it is Zana, right? Zan and Jaina, there we go. Jaina is much more shy and reserved. So one of the things that the principal does is put her in charge of daily announcements. So if you have any love for the Wonder Twins, and I know that this is a very hot topic now, the Wonder Twins are not loved by everyone, but I grew up with Super Friends. I have Wonder Twins action figures. You can't see them. They're up on my top shelf in here. So I am a fan of the Wonder Twins. They warm my heart. So this issue was fantastic, and it is the beginning. As again, 6-issue miniseries. I think that's a great way to do it. I'm glad that DC didn't announce this as an ongoing. Let Marc Russell tell his story and let the world connect with the Wonder Twins again. And I did some research. This is actually the first Wonder Twins comic book with the name Wonder Twins on it. So the Wonder Twins appeared in Super Friends comics back in the day, but there has never been a quote-unquote Wonder Twins comic book until now. So if you grew up with Super Friends, if you say Wonder Twins powers activate, if you form of water and animals, if those phrases mean something to you, I suggest you pick up Wonder Twins #1. I really enjoyed it. So there we go. Again, a great week of comics. Head out to your local comic store and show them some love. Support your LCS. And check out some of these books that I recommended. Or just pick up your pull list. I'm sure they'll be happy to see you. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please like, comment, and share. I will absolutely respond to every comment that we get. We got some great comments on last week's episode. There will also be links to all of the comics in the show notes if you want to check them out for more information. And thanks for watching. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this and listen to what I have to say. And if I'm missing any of your favorites, please let me know. I can't read everything. I know I didn't mention Immortal Hulk last week, and someone brought that up. It's not that I don't like Immortal Hulk, it's that I just haven't gotten around to it. I read like an issue or two and decided I would read it in trade. I just haven't circled back around to it. But I know it's great because our customers are raving about it. And I have people that will come in specifically just to pick up. They won't let their pull list sit for a couple weeks when Immortal Hulk comes out. They come in right away when Immortal Hulk comes out because they can't wait to read it. So that wraps another week. Have a great one, and I'll see you again real soon.